Welcome to the Calgary Sessions. This is episode number 94. I'm your host, Jeff Humphreys. Today's guest, this is a Mr. Graham Edge introduction. We got hooked up, I don't know, a month and a half ago, a couple months ago. So whenever Graham says you two need to meet, it's always usually a good lead-in to aligning with a really cool human. So please name and who you are.
Very strong hit rate with that when you get like the Graham Edge intro.
He's done it to me a couple times, and it's usually like, okay, thank you, obviously.
Yeah.
He's obviously done that to you.
A few times, yeah.
Yeah. What do you think? Sorry. No, name and who you are before we get going.
Cory Paddock. Who am I? So I'm co-founder and president of a company called GBE Energy here in Calgary. I guess if we were somewhere else, it'd be like a narrative violation. Mm-hmm. But we're an energy trading shop, yeah.
Cool. Back to the Edge thing.
Okay.
What do you think? Why does he? What allows him to make those connections fairly seamlessly?
I've thought about this. There's I read this great essay. It's going to piss me off. I can't think of the name. I think it's The Honest Broker. So there's it's just like a term for somebody who just generally gets utility out of kind of adding value to society, connecting people. They enjoy doing it. They don't need anything from it. Mm-hmm. I don't even think they're thinking selfishly like, oh, it'll get paid forward to me later on. Yeah. They just generally like to connect people. Yeah. That's how I would characterize him. He's one of these people. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's you've known him a lot longer than I have, but it's cool when those new friendships kind of start happening, and then it leads to like these kind of connections. It's really like you never see it coming.
No.
So you've seen a couple of these.
I have.
You kind of know what's about to go down.
Yeah, this is like a thing now. Congrats.
Thank you. At 94. Pre-94, not a thing. Now we're a thing.
Yeah.
So it's I'd like the guests to go back as far as they want to go. You know, how you grew up, where you grew up, you know, how your parents inspired you or didn't inspire you, what you're interested in, you know, just kind of, you know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to drag you along and get to where you are today, which is a very interesting place. So
okay,
take it back.
And I'm sure you'll just interrupt me when you find something interesting.
And I'm
if there is something interesting.
Usually I'm fairly polite about not interrupting people. but if you're on a thread that it's like got me going, I might like interject quickly. But I really I like to just shut up and listen.
Okay. Well, here we go. Well, I was born here.
No way.
I was born and raised here. My dad was born here too. The house that he grew up in was just torn down probably a handful of years ago on Bonus Road in Hillhurst. So, he used to tell me stories of like selling cokes to the construction workers from the overpass over Crowchild.
Do you give that much thought being like born and raised here? Does it, day to day, year to year, does it actually, do you think about it? Does it occupy space? Does it enter into any conversations?
Once in a while, I think, coming on this podcast was a good catalyst to kind of think about it. And, just think about the institutions in the city that contributed to kind of where I am now. Yeah. Not to mention just like the extraordinary growth that's happened in the city since, going back to the 80s. Yeah. So, in some ways it's like unrecognizable. In some ways it's very recognizable because things happen slowly and then you look back 10 years and you're like, wow, can't believe that happened. Yeah. But, I'm sure
it's just there, right? It's just this like, I think, and for me, I might be putting words in your mouth, but I just kind of, you move through space and in different situations, you don't really think about it. It's just like, I feel more connected. This is like through and through like my home.
Yep.
So I just feel more comfortable in all different places in the city.
Yep. Very similar for me. I think not too dissimilar from a lot of people that grow up in the city. Initially, you may be thinking that there's something better out there. And I don't know if that's just how we personify ourselves or think about ourselves. And I think it is really, really valuable to go and travel. And, in my case, live in a couple different places, and then, you know, when given the choice around like where to set up and establish a family, try to establish some roots, get involved in the community, then really when you step back and think about things, it's like, well, where is better than here? It's like, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Aside from like the 8 months of winter, but
Get over that.
we'll get over that. Yeah.
Sorry, so I took you off your I side railed you already.
Yeah.
It's a bonus road, so you're back. Take me back there.
Sorry. Yeah. So my lived like a very kind of normal childhood, right? Like my dad was a band teacher at, I'm going way back, like Vanier, and then at Aberhart. He was my band teacher as well. So I played the tuba when I was in high school.
You did?
Yeah.
Dude, so when I was in band in junior high,
Yeah.
I was ridiculous. I didn't practice, couldn't read music, horrible. So I sat in the back. 1 year I was on the tuba.
Yeah.
1 year I was on the trombone. And I think the third year I just didn't do anything. But I don't think I played a note in any like recital. I just sat in the back and like didn't blow, just moved buttons, and then just moved that damn thing, and that was it.
Tuba's a pretty good place to hide.
So how'd you land on a tuba?
How did I land on a tuba? So when I was in grade 5, my dad actually went back to school. So we all moved to Missouri. Our family moved to Missouri. He went back and did his master's there. And there you start music earlier. So at that time I started playing trombone. And then when we came back, felt like I needed to play something different, but I guess I didn't have enough guts to try something way different. So I started playing tuba in grade
Same
7.
row.
And, yeah.
That musical with your dad being in band teacher.
Yeah.
Was music a big thing in the house? Was it kind of this, besides instruments?
Yeah.
Was there like, for me, music was, I have these like memories of my mom blasting like Whitney Houston and Rick Ashley and Lionel Richie and Michael Jackson. Like, was music a thing in your house?
Strangely, in some ways not. Like there was always the expectation that my sister and I would take lessons, and I don't think even really we had a choice of being like opting out of band. Because it's like one of those things where your parents have a strong view about something, and then you learn like several years later that they were right, and you have to kind of just go with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely part of,
Yeah.
I guess, the culture of our house, but
Yeah.
yeah, it wasn't like front and center all the time. No.
All right. So playing tuba.
Playing tuba. My mom was school librarian.
Okay.
And a serial volunteer. So very much involved in Girl Guides, quilting, and probably most of all Heritage Park. So we've always had ties to Heritage Park as a family. She helped run the Fall Fair, which is still a festival that exists, and Festival of Quilts.
Cool.
So we're still like very much tied to that institution as well.
Yeah, and that's an interesting organization to be a part of. Like it's been around forever.
Forever.
Yeah.
And again, like something you take for granted, but like, imagine like building a place like that now. It's like this amazing place in the reservoir.
Yeah.
A really good contribution to the community.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it like initiates really, really interesting conversation around our past, and when we've gone as a family now, the boys really like it.
Yeah.
And it's just like it's something so completely different.
So what's going on? What else is going on in junior high? You playing sports yet, or what are you doing? Are you like
Yeah.
music guy? You the band geek?
No, I'm not.
That's not a diss.
No, like I don't know. Probably at that time, like band is kind of if anything, like band is like kind of the homework.
Yeah.
But lifelong passion for sport. Yeah.
Like through and through.
Through and through.
Yeah.
Like growing up, probably my best sport was baseball. Played kind of throughout junior high and elementary. And, if I think about some of the butterfly effect moments of my life, there was this one lunch hour in junior high. I was going to Brandon at the time. And a friend of mine and I, his name's Travis Stevens, we were walking down the hallway, and not even thinking anything of it. Kind of walked right by the gym, and the gym teacher, Mr. Taitula, kind of interrupted us and said, "Well, aren't you guys coming to volleyball tryouts? Like, we're having a meeting just to kind of like talk about the team and really." And we weren't going to go, and it's like, oh, okay, I guess we're not doing anything else. Just kind of walk back and then go to this meeting, both make the team, and then that's when I started playing volleyball, I guess. And yeah, really took to it.
That got you right. Like that was
it. Like, if I kept walking or the timing was different, I wouldn't have played. And then from there, I ended up playing club volleyball with the Dinos, and then playing in high school, and then eventually playing post-secondary.
So the athletic piece, once you kind of walked in that gym and made that team, was volleyball like all in right away? Like, did you realize, the first practice, the first team, being around a team, did you realize right away that this was going to be?
I don't think so. No, like it was fun and all, and I.
Were you good naturally, like right away?
I was pretty good, but not outrageously good that first year. It was probably like the next year. I was like, okay, I'm like pretty good at this.
Yep.
It was a different era, and my buddies and I talk about this quite a bit.
Buddies that you played with?
Buddies I play with, and just friends now in kind of our cohort.
Yep.
We're all just kind of like, we find kind of so much of youth sport culture now so perverse, and kind of lament how it's gone to this like over specialization culture, and I think we all feel pretty passionately about it, and I think we're going to do our best to kind of reverse that.
Cool.
And give all of our kids good opportunities to play everything, which is kind of what we did.
Yeah. There's a lot to be said for that, right? And I think some of the best athletes in the world are on the same. They believe in the same things.
Yes, they do, and empirically, it's starting to show up. Like,
oh, it is?
Yeah. There's studies being done. So empirically now, it's like, age 10 is a lousy time to determine whether somebody's going to be elite at a particular sport. Yet that's kind of what we're doing. It's like, no, you got to know by age 10 whether you're going to be, whether hockey's your thing. And we're going to do this like 6 days a week. Like, come on, what are we doing here? What are we trying to achieve? Where, really, I feel quite strongly about this. Like, we should be thinking more along the lines of, well, first of all, just fun.
Yep.
The second thing is, how can we curate an environment that initiates a lifelong love of movement, as opposed to, a 3-year burnout and then never touch movement again.
Yeah.
And then I know it's like everybody's lost their minds around the probability of going pro, even though the payoff's pretty high now. But I don't know if people aren't doing the math. So I don't know. What are we doing here? It's kind of how we're thinking about it.
What do you when you're saying the results? Like, there's like data behind this now.
Yeah.
What's the data actually? What's it saying?
Well, I think there's like a few major trends. One, like if you over specialize in one modality, you're kind of missing out on kind of the cross training modalities that can contribute to an elite sport.
Yep.
And there's stuff being done more actively now in Europe. Even a lot of the like pro soccer teams are paying much more close attention to this, and not just doing like soccer. They're football. They're doing like other things, other modalities. And then like the burnout part is so real. So much of being elite at anything is having this intrinsic passion for it.
Yeah. So
like, how can you predict whether somebody's got passion for something at age 10? That doesn't make any sense. So you're much better served to try and curate an environment where there's several options in front of our kids, and maybe something will hit. And there's this great book range. I'm sure a bunch of listeners of our viewers, I don't know, both. I've read this book, and there's this famous opening chapter, looking at the difference between Federer and Woods. So like everybody knows like the Earl Woods kind of like over the top dad, like over specialized super early. Yep. And then Federer was like kind of the opposite. Like if I remember correctly, his mom was a tennis teacher and like didn't let him specialize until like he was like 15 or 16. Was still playing like a high level of soccer, and then you can kind of see how that translates into his movement, into that sport. So, even if you're like, you ignore all the probability stuff around payoffs around professional sport and say, I want to create like the most optimal professional athlete in my family, then still the optimal choice is to like go through and give all kinds of different options. Anyway.
It's interesting you're on this because I've been coaching my nephews the last 4 years in hockey.
Okay.
And they're like...
Hockey knows how to go over the top.
Oh, yeah, quickly. So my generation, I'm born in 77.
Yeah.
So back then, like specializing wasn't really a thing, right?
Yeah.
And like it just wasn't a thing. But now, like the kids that I was coaching were U9. So for 4 years, I had 4 groups of U9-year-olds.
Yeah.
And you could see already at 9-year-olds not playing like team 1, team 2. This is like team 3 and 4. And some of these parents are creating these little monsters. And you can see when they get to the rink, by the time...
Do they even want to be there?
Well, that's it. They're done. So I'm trying to run a practice, educate them, and let them have some fun. And there's nothing.
Yeah.
They're tired. They're not excited to be there.
Yeah.
And they've been on the ice 14 times in 6 days. It's over it. So it makes a lot of sense. I think what's interesting is people need to experience this. They need to like see this happening, or listen to their kids, and it's way different.
I say all of this, and then when I look back, it's like some of the most important times of my life being involved in a high level sport and a team. But I think it's
the lead up.
We're not thinking very carefully about like how to create the right environment up to the lead up. And maybe it's just become a business, and then once it's a business,
And that's what's changed a lot, right? So for me, for the hockey thing, it was like there was no private academies. There was no like 12-month programs for skill development. There was literally like a warm-up thing that you go pay Garth Malarchuk, he'd run this camp.
Yeah.
It was like a week before tryouts, and you go skate around and like figure out if your skates still fit, and then you go try out. that was it. But now when it turns into a business, then what?
Yeah.
But yeah, so then I think that changes everything.
Yeah.
This is so random. Anyways, keep going. So you are playing sports. You're in band.
I'm in band.
Yeah. High school?
Yeah, and then went to high school at Aberhart.
Volleyball right away?
Volleyball right away. There was a year of lockout. So I guess this is like, I'm also of the generation to like have seen some of the lows. Right. So like, budget cuts, the years of Rockline, which is like, you can agree or disagree with the politics of it. Like we had no money.
Yep.
There's the ups and downs of the city are still like worth noting.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had the opportunity to either go straight into UC or go to Mount Royal.
Yep.
I went to Mount Royal on a scholarship actually.
Athletic or?
No, it was academic.
Were you a smart person?
No, like a good solid like B plus, A minus kind of thing.
That's like brilliant in this room. That's brilliant.
Like probably the type of person that, in a lot of ways, actually, I'm still kind of the same. Where you do, you know the amount of work required to get like the best result. And then that little extra is like kind of not worth it, and that little extra time-wise is better used somewhere else.
Yeah.
So that's probably the way to think about my academic career: spending just enough time to get good grades, but not going crazy for that extra like 10%.
Yeah.
Which carried through in university too. But
so did they? How'd that process look? Going to Mount Royal?
So at that time it's still college, and there was a bunch of programs where you could do your first 2 years there and then transfer over.
I remember that.
Yeah, so I started in engineering, did fine, just didn't really like it. Wanted to do more options and stuff, and decided I was going to do a business after that. So did like pre-business classes, did a bunch of options and stuff in Mount Royal side, and then transferred over to UC.
And played volleyball the whole time?
Yep.
Those teams back then, were you guys good?
Yeah.
So when I was there, I was at Mount Royal. Fuck. I went to Mount Royal 3 times and dropped out 3 times.
Yeah.
My first like stint was probably a year and a half, and it was in like 96, 97.
Yeah.
And I remember the sports, it was still college back then, but the sports teams were really good.
They were good. Yeah, they were good. The first year I was there, we won nationals. Second year, didn't. Didn't make it to nationals, actually, but Alberta's really strong at that point.
Yeah.
Still is. And then transferred to U of C, and our U of C teams are good.
Yep.
I think 3rd, 5th, and 4th the years I was playing there.
You kind of just slid in. When you win a national championship,
Yeah,
at any sport, at any age, that's a thing.
it is.
Do you, and then back to the conversation of like being all in on this like team environment and.
Yeah.
It's important, isn't it? It's a different way to kind of experience, or not to grow up, but just to, at that age, to experience those kind of wins and camaraderie and. It's a unique time in your life.
It's a unique time. I still, when I think about the biggest value, actually, aside from like the camaraderie, which is, I mean, you can't replace it. So many of my lifelong friends come from that period. I mean, to this day. But I think the kind of most interesting thing that you learn as an athlete that's applicable in the rest of your life is the ability to lose. Not necessarily like what happens when you win.
Yep.
So even like the most elite athletes are still losing all the time, like 20% of the time, 30%, 40%. And so it takes a different kind of personality, I think, to come back from losing and not get banged up too much from it and learn from it and adjust from it. And I think that's, when people talk about athletes being, really well suited in the business world, I think that's the aspect that is actually quite valuable. So, you have things planned in a certain way, and then you get punched in the mouth in a different way. So you've got an opponent that is also trying to beat you, and you don't really know how that's going to pan out. And then you have to react, and then not only in the moment, but then afterwards, and then kind of replan and rejig, and then go back after it. So at least that's the way I think about it.
When did you start thinking about it that way? Like how long after your competitive career did you start realizing what you'd figured out?
In trading. In trading.
So like way like down the road.
Down the road. Yeah. In trading.
Because I've never heard it. I've never heard that perspective of, like high-end athletes. That's the big takeaway. Usually it's like teamwork, commitment, dedication, detail. And
I think those are like things. The table stakes things.
That's it. I was just going to say that. That's like, that's what you're getting. But the loss piece is really interesting.
Yeah.
Because it is. I think when you put some losses on the board early, at least you understand how to react as when they happen later in life.
Yeah. And I mean, it happens. Yeah, the parallels to trading are so strong there. Where, if you think about going back to sports, so you have 3 or 4 losing days in a row, and you feel like nothing. You're a complete failure. You're never going to win again. So it's like kind of same thing going back to like a losing streak, and then you reevaluate things. You work hard. You try and like figure something out that the opponent hasn't figured out, and then maybe you get 4 or 5 winning days in a row, and then you feel like, oh, I'm unstoppable. Nothing can stop me again. Like I'm never going to lose. Like it can be that wild at times. Yeah.
Playing university, college level sport is a thing. Obviously, it's like you do the math and how many schools feed into this thing to sort of play it.
Yeah.
What was your like when you first got into sport? Was there ever a goal that you had in your mind? Like, did you ever put on the board like the Olympics or the beach tour or the pro? Like, did you ever think about like a big heady goal like that?
Yeah, I think in high school, I probably still had ambitions of that. I never really got close to playing on the national team. So at that point, it was at that point in my career, I knew, I guess with more realism, at what level I could have got.
Yep.
but still was playing at a pretty high level, and still had ambitions to play after I was done, which I did. So I played a year in Germany, which was again like a super invaluable experience. And, I guess I can say pro because they did pay me.
That's it. I'm sitting across from a pro.
Yeah, they paid me. Didn't have much left after traveling and having some beers and But
so what'd you finish coming out of university? What'd you have?
so I had a bachelor in Dinos athletics, and then
Lots of red.
no, I did my BCom in finance. Yeah.
Was it like your focus when you got to U of C or even at Mount Royal?
Yeah.
Was it like 80 sport, 20 school, or did you have to kind of split your energy in both spots?
Mental energy, that's probably about right, if I'm being honest. Yeah.
Like you were just like that.
Yeah.
A team sport performance.
Yeah, and if I look back on it, I think that was probably the right amount of energy allocation.
Because you were on the school side, you could kind of like
you could get by and get like figure enough out.
Yeah.
But like still, that the sports side was what was more interesting. And then if I look back on it, that's that's the stuff I used more now.
You and I have talked about this a little bit. The high performance piece. When you were playing volleyball, were you looking at it as like a high performance sport? Were you training off the court as much as you were, focused on the court? Did you understand it was high performance you were doing, or were you just like working towards?
Yeah, I think in some ways it was a little bit early when we think about like super high performance and like kind of optimizing everything around our lives.
Yeah. Like diet
and
off season, in season.
Yep.
Yeah.
So like, I think about performance way more now than I did at that time. And we just know more now, and we've got more tools to measure. And so knowing what I know now, going back to then, probably wouldn't have drank as much. I would have still drank, but not as much. God, it would have been so horrible for recovery anyway. But no, I did everything else. Like we trained. I trained pretty hard in the off season.
Yep.
I played beach in the off season. I ran hills. I did weights. Kind of did everything, and would come back at the start of the season, and that would be kind of my fittest. And
yeah.
Yeah.
So it was like, do you think it's not everyone can do that? I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's like dedication or if it's this internal drive to get to the next level, but to do all that while you're hanging out with your friends, while you're drinking, while you're going out, like all these things, but then still have that switch where like, okay, I'm going to go run hills, I can do all these things.
Yeah.
What is that, you think?
I think it's still just intrinsic love or motivation for what you're doing.
For that thing?
But I guess in the moment, you have to remove the abstraction of this matters now, even though the payoff isn't like until 6 months from now.
Yeah.
And that it's this very much this cumulative thing that you're moving towards and building on.
Yeah.
So I think maybe that's where, and then you have to actually enjoy the training. So there's a lot of people that don't actually enjoy the training, and then this other subset that don't enjoy the training, but know if they do it, they'll enjoy the thing they do enjoy more down the road.
Yep. Yeah, it's I've just come across so many characters in my life that have been able to figure that out and got to the next level, and I just didn't have that like whatever it was.
That extra thing.
Yeah. That extra 10%, right?
Yeah.
So you graduate.
Yeah.
Germany, you slid that in there.
Yeah.
So let's go there. When you graduate, what are you thinking? Are you thinking like, I know what I'm going to do with my life, or I'm going to chase professional? I want to go play.
No, nothing. Right? Like
it's pretty. You're what you graduated with. Not vague, but like so many different paths to take. You didn't have a really sense of what it is you were going to do.
Not at that time, no. And I think we're probably. Well, I don't know. Maybe we're not. We haven't gotten better at this. Maybe the internet's helped a lot to give young people more imagination for just the types of jobs that are out there.
Yeah.
But at that time, it's like you don't know.
What did it look like? Do you remember the potential lanes you could go down, like the traditional ones that they were?
I was pretty fortunate to have a family friend who was in the energy trading space, so at least like knew it existed.
Yep.
But it was still pretty abstract, and we didn't really get into it that much. At that time, I'm just like, oh, I've got this opportunity to go and play and travel. Like, yeah, let's go do that. Need to do that. I'll worry about the other stuff later.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we could be doing such a better job of like preparing people and giving people imagination for what you can do.
I think you're right. I think the internet is a big. It's opened up so many more doors.
Yeah.
I think when I was in school, and I didn't go to, like I said, I didn't go to post-secondary barely, but in high school, it's very traditional. You know, all the traditional roles, right? Engineers, lawyers, la. But then the internet shows up, and then these people looks like they're making a living a bunch of different ways.
Yeah.
At least even if they're not making a living, they're being creative. At least they're doing something that they're half talented at or somewhat interested in. I think that kind of opened it up to everything.
We continue to have this failure as humans for like decades. When some new technology comes out, we say, oh, it's going to destroy all these jobs. Never does. It creates like 3x jobs in ways that we're not even expecting. It'll happen again as we grow older.
Well, you're a very smart dude, so I'm going to throw this one at you, which I haven't talked about this at all with anybody.
Okay.
AI.
Yeah.
So new technology.
Yeah.
You know, the internet came out. Everyone's like going to lose jobs.
Yeah.
3x them.
Yeah.
So now AI is whatever version of the internet you want to call it, 4.0 or whatever. Can you look at it from the same lens as it's going to 3x jobs? Like it's going to create things that we can't even see that are going to happen yet, versus everyone's just like, hey, it's going to take all these jobs away.
I think so. And I think in a way that maybe not a lot of people are thinking about it this way.
Have you been thinking about this, by the way?
Yeah.
See, I knew you were going to. See, I know you think and read and do a lot, so I knew you were going to be ready for this.
So I guess my thesis is intertwined with my thesis around just economic growth in general, and very much being like a proponent of economic growth, and economic growth eventually untethering itself from the physical world. So we think of it very much now as being like extractive. We extract resources from the planet, we take that away, and that's really what we convert it into cool machines and do all this shit, and that's kind of what economic growth is. But fundamentally, as the world gets more and more rich, we're taking care of more and more levels of Maslow's hierarchy, right? Like, we're not hungry anymore, most of us, and that's getting better every day. We don't have as much disease, we've got shelter, and then kind of what's next? Well, we're all miserable. And nobody's really figured that part out. And whether AI is actually the answer to that, I'm not really sure. It very well could be, but that's like a huge, huge chunk that we haven't really satisfied and figured out as humans. So I'm very much unafraid of like AI taking everything. And if it opens up opportunities for us to be happier, which I think it will, then, well, yeah, let's go. Bring it on.
It's going to be a very interesting time in our lives to be at like the ground level to see where this goes. And recently, I don't know, it's been on top of my, I never talk about this shit. So it's just like, I know you can do this. So I'm like, oh, he'll go with this. It's just that there's so many different ways to look at it. And I think there's like the tragic ways. And I think there's this like, the more positive ways that there's like, we don't know what's going to come. And yes, there'll be a little bit of job loss or people are going to be uncomfortable, but I think the benefits are going to be.
We often have this failure of imagination for these things, right? Like, we can talk about like Calgary, and we can look back and say in the past 10 years, like, oh, it's changed so much, right? In hindsight. And then we have very little imagination for how much it can change over the next 10 years. Yeah. We'll just be like, oh no, it's just going to gradually change as opposed to, no, it's like, it's got all these different pathways it can go. Yep. Same thing with the internet. Yep. And jobs are still evolving there. Yep. You could say with podcasting. Like,
that's it. Like you can, yeah. It's all there. I could go on. I don't want to keep going on AI because it'd just be like all consuming. Go back to the decision to go. You want to play pro?
I'm still loving the game.
Yep.
The opportunity to like somewhat get paid to travel. Like you want to go and do it. I want to get exposed to another culture. I'm just like all these check boxes to want to that doing that was able to kind of accomplish.
And also just like not, because when you have such good experiences around sport, it's tough
you
to
don't want
walk
it to
away.
end.
Yeah.
You don't want it to end.
Mm-hmm.
No.
I was just watching this, what even I forget, it was a teaser for some, oh, you know what, I'm watching that Magic documentary on Netflix or whatever it is.
Okay.
It's like a 4-part thing. So the part that I just watched yesterday was about him talking when he retired, when he got HIV.
Yeah.
And then the biggest thing he missed was like the team. You know, it's not necessarily the championships or the travel, and it's just like being around a bunch of teammates.
Yeah.
So I'm sure as school is over, that's on your mind.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, when you think of it that way, it's a way that we've tried to orient the business too, but we can come back to that.
Yeah. Well, that's why when we get there, it's just gonna be like, all these things are gonna make a lot of sense. Yeah. So what happens after that year? What are you up to?
Yeah. So after that year, I get injured. I come back, get shoulder surgery, have ambitions to go back. I'm going to gloss through this pretty quick.
Yeah.
And end up going to Vancouver for a year, chasing a girl. That didn't work out. Came back to Calgary. And then at that point, I became more interested in trading, that it could be a thing.
And why? Like, where does that, as obscure, you touched on before, there's someone in your world that was doing it, but it is a dark science.
Yeah.
And so to have that interest is just because of that one person?
Partially, I would say. I think I was always attracted to this idea that it was kind of a continuation of sport, where every day there's a clear winner and loser. There's a scorecard. You know whether you're getting better or you're getting worse. There's I'd be lying if I said there wasn't like a monetary driver.
Yep.
So yeah,
just kind of made sense.
Yeah. And it was lucrative if you did well.
Yep.
I mean, it still is.
Yep.
It's hard. Big barriers to entry. Big challenge. So it was just it was a very attractive thing to think about and try and go after.
So what'd that process start to look like?
And I mean, this process can go in so many different directions, right? And
how old are you when you kind of?
I'm probably 25 at
Okay.
that point, 26.
Okay.
Yeah. And really at that point, I wasn't picky, right? It could have been stocks, bonds, commodities. I was just looking for any route into any of these industries.
Yeah. And
got a role in the back office at TransAlta, and kind of learned the business that way. Did well enough in that role to get noticed, which I guess I would suggest to any young person, if you're trying to get into some industry, then take the shitty job, work your ass off to try and get noticed.
Is that what it was? Was that your move?
Yeah, I mean, in hindsight, that's the move. But yeah, you try and get as close to where you want to be as you can.
Yeah.
And then even then, it kind of took a stroke of luck to get a trading role, because the trading manager at the time, wasn't a big fan of mine, and left the company, and then that opened up the opportunity for who came behind him to actually hire me. So, who knows if I would have just got continually stole mold and kind of moved on, but. Again, one of those kind of chance moments.
It's like walking down the hallway.
Yeah, just exactly. Yeah, so that was another butterfly effect moment. And then so my first trading role was doing real time trading at TransAlta. So
run me through what the hell that is.
Yeah,
just like the dumbed down version of I want everyone that's watching and listening to understand this dark science in the shortest amount of time as possible.
Okay, so I think first of all, it might be worth stepping back and talking about, does trading actually offer anything up to society?
Sure.
or are these just a bunch of greedy assholes taking all our money, right?
Fair.
So I think the way to think about this is you've got a farmer and you've got a mill, and you've got the farmer, working his ass off just to make some good damn wheat. And then he has a good harvest, and then he wants to sell the wheat, right? and then he goes to market, and then the mill actually doesn't want to buy it at that time. So
got too much, whatever.
Got too much. And then what's the farmer going to do? So then he has to continually lower his price, and then, okay, whatever, the mill will find a way to go and like buy the wheat. And then you've got somebody else in the middle saying, okay, this is kind of wrong. In equilibrium, the farmer should get paid a little bit higher, and then the mill should pay a little bit more. I'm going to go and build some silos. I'm going to store some of this, and then I'm going to help price converge between these two, the buyer and the seller. So what you end up like with this kind of price convergence where, you're closer to the intersection of supply and demand. It's more efficient for society. Not to mention the fact that the farmer doesn't have to worry about going and marketing this. Like all he wants to do is spend time in the dirt.
Yep.
And then the mill, same thing. He doesn't want to set up like some procurement arm, like just wants to go about their business. So at a high level, I think that's a way to think about it, right? So now electricity is completely different.
Yeah.
Electricity is funky because you can't store it. Anything that people read about like energy storage growing at exponential rates, it's slightly interesting, but it's still decades away. Fundamentally, the lights stay on by virtue of the fact that supply and demand have to intersect kind of perfectly at the same time. So by virtue of that, you've got like a whole orchestrated thing happening in the background where you've got a centralized kind of entity or dispatcher that's trying to predict where demand is going to be, and then also matching it up against where supply is going to be, and then making sure that the frequency is the same across the entire grid, and we don't overload lines, and all the lights stay on perfectly, and we can use as much electricity as we want.
There's a lot of moving pieces.
So there's some moving pieces. And all of that used to be done in a centralized way, and it still is in many jurisdictions. So like it's still all organized and coordinated at a provincial level in BC. It's not deregulated, so there's not private entities kind of trading around. Same thing in Saskatchewan.
Yep.
And in a bunch of different places throughout North America, a bunch of those actions have been kind of liberalized into the market. So, and has made things much more efficient. So if you think about like a government organization that's responsible for making investment decisions around generation, investment decisions around transmission, predicting where load is going to be, managing an electrical grid, doing all these things. You've got like one body doing that, or the alternative is you set up, clear and good market rules, and then let like thousands of people go and make all these decisions. And ultimately, it's my view that scenario creates a better outcome for society. So at that time,
dude, I love it because it's like I'm learning shit. So it's like it's cool to hear it, and it's cool to hear it in a way that's like concise and makes sense. So well done.
Okay.
You think you're going off on some tangent. I'm like, no, this is great.
I'm like that one guy, that one meme where the guy's like, he's got the board with like the pictures. Yeah.
It's because your brain's moving so fast. You're like, yes.
Okay, so I'm working real time.
Yeah.
So on the East desk in TransAlta, it was split up into two different groups.
Okay.
Do I want to go that deep? Anyway, maybe I will. Okay, so there's an Eastern interconnect and there's a Western interconnect in North America.
Yep.
So electrically, we're connected to San Diego.
Okay.
But in Saskatchewan's actually electrically connected to Florida.
Okay.
So there's like a spine that runs right down the middle where basically the grid is synchronized, and all the power is flowing and moving separately between these two jurisdictions or these two huge areas.
Yep. Texas
is its own thing, as you can imagine, and Quebec is its own thing, as you can imagine. So like everything kind of makes sense when you think about it. So the Eastern desk, there's several different deregulated markets, and the real-time desk was responsible for kind of moving power between different regions with the hopes of kind of capturing value between the different prices between those regions. So
All
that was my
live.
first drive. Yeah, all live, 24/7, middle of the night. Yeah.
So there's like shift work stuff.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, I did almost 2 years of shift work, and
Gross.
yeah, it's good for my golf game.
There's a couple of wins. So what happens after that? Whatever happens after TransAlta? Are
So
you digging it too? Are you like, is this kind of,
Yeah.
is this everything you thought it might be? Like it's
Yeah.
filling you up?
yeah, it's so nichey.
Yeah.
Like
Just obscure.
it's obscure. It's yeah, so many niches and nooks and crannies, and there's not a lot of people that know a lot about it.
Yeah.
At
Can you
that-
learn more about it, or do you have to be in the trenches to learn about it? Or can you like digest things outside of that?
I think both.
Yeah.
I think both. There's this saying where like one trade is worth 100 reports. It's probably worth like 1,000 reports. So whether the trade worked out or not, like
Yeah.
you'll learn something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at that time, I met my mentor, Jerry Zhang, as well. So, and this is notable. So, yeah, very, very special relationship in my life.
You know that right away?
We'll come. Kind of.
Did he hate you first, and then he like figured out
A
you're
little
a good
bit.
dude? Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, a little bit.
Were you why was that? Were you I don't want to say overconfident, but did you carry yourself differently? Were you just like why do you think
I don't know.
that first reaction would be like, yeah, who is this guy?
It's a good question. Yeah, I don't know what. Like, sometimes you just don't vibe with others,
Is he
right?
he's still around?
Jerry?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's a huge part of the story.
Okay, good. So
Yeah.
you should ask him.
I will. Yeah, I will ask
Or
him.
maybe I will. I don't know you, but I got a question.
Yeah.
Sorry. So keep going.
So he got on the trade floor around the same time, like kind of worked his way up analyst onto the trade floor. I mean, his story is, I don't want to tell his story.
Yep.
It's very interesting. Moved here from China in his early 30s. Kind of shitty job working glass manufacturing in the middle of the night. Did his MBA at UC, and then got his first job out of his MBA at TransAlta. So,
Cool.
So we meet, and he's doing day trading, but spending, I don't know, 60 to 70 to 80 hours a week on the desk, just trying to learn the shit. And then I'm there doing shift work, and then kind of there in the middle of the night, early in the morning, he's there. We're talking about the market. We're just like gradually trying to figure things out. I get a promotion after a couple of years almost 2 years doing shift work, and we work side by side, and we do really well together. And then from there, here's like kind of the next butterfly moment. So, yeah, so my wife and I have a trip planned. At that time, we weren't married. Down in Costa Rica, and I'm just looking for like, and I've got some extra time, so I've got like an extra 4 or 5 days, and I'm just looking for like a connection to play some golf before we get there. And so I fly and connect in Houston, or I'm just looking at flight options, whatever, and like, okay, Houston looks okay. So I go down to Houston, and one of my former colleagues at TransAlta, a guy actually I kind of helped train, he had moved down to a smaller shop. I guess we would call it kind of a hedge fund, but it was a fund owned by two business partners.
Yep.
And I just let him know, yeah, I'm going to be in Houston for a couple nights. He's like, oh yeah, let's get together. So we get together for dinner one night, and then he said, oh, I think you should meet the partners. So then the next night we meet one of the partners, or I thought I was just going to meet one of them. Both of them were there. We had dinner, and I don't know, probably like 8 vodka sodas, and then kind of by the end of if you spent any time in Houston, like a single's a double, and a double is like a quad. So we're drinking all this Grey Goose and soda, and then by the end of the night, I've got a job offer. So at that time, kind of like knew that like other funds were out there outside of kind of just the utility space. Yep. Definitely knew that like all the big banks were still trading, so like knew that was kind of an option. But I was still pretty early in my career. Like made a little bit of money, but I was still like trying to figure out my craft and find my space. And so I like deliberated over this for a couple months, and then ended up moving to Houston. That would have been kind of the summer of 2010, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah. And then,
All by chance, like all just a little moment
Yeah.
in time.
yeah, but it's like, I was open to it, right? Like I obviously didn't fuck up the interview with them. I must have said something interesting. Yeah, so like him and Hod, and then took the job. And even for that first, 4 or 5 months, it was like pretty close to getting spit out the back end of the industry, right? Like not losing a bunch of money, but like not really making a bunch of money. And then was kind of sitting on a strategy that been thinking about for a while, but it would kind of need the right weather and the right kind of characteristics to happen in the market. And then put on that trade in December of 2010, and then in a matter of 7 days, made as much as most traders would kind of hope to make in a lifetime.
No way.
So,
And you'd been thinking about this, like,
but not really having some imagination for what it could do or where it could go. So it was like a very bizarre and surreal moment. And then like the bonus payout period was like a month later. So it was,
it just
boom.
is that like a unicorn moment? A unicorn moment?
This shit does not happen.
Okay, it doesn't.
No.
Period.
No, like no, not like this. Yeah, not like this.
So how do you handle that?
I don't know.
Did your head just start rolling? Like, is it just? It's a lot to handle.
Yeah, it's
early in a career. Like,
in a lot of ways, was still feeling imposter syndrome, and like not really knowing where it would go from there.
Yeah.
Like, is this a sustainable thing, or was it just like one off and then you're kind of done?
Yep.
So yeah, like I came back to Calgary in the new year, met up with Jerry, kind of told him the story, and it was something that he would want to do, or I know it's something that he wanted, right, to move on to another fund, away from a utility where just the upside isn't there for traders, which makes sense. It's like it's very difficult at a big company to for boards and for management to compensate
all the way down
like that. It's just it's never really been done kind of throughout the history of commodity trading, or just in rare instances, I should say. So I go back to Houston, convince those partners that you should try and hire Jerry. And we kind of figure that deal out, and then Jerry comes down to Houston, and we're down there for another 8 months.
Okay.
And Duell convinced those partners to let us set up a satellite office back in Calgary, and we have like another great year, and then those two business partners go through a messy business divorce, which was like kind of the best thing that ever happened to us. So we didn't feel great about going with either one of them to the new funds that both of them had started.
Yeah.
And so we started GB.
No
so
way.
that's
What year was that?
that's 2013. Yeah.
No way. The decade.
Yeah, decade. Yeah. We're like several days away from the 10-year anniversary.
Oh, it's like right here.
Yeah.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Okay. So like lots of little moments, right? That just unplanned for, can't see it. There's no way you could predict any of this happening.
No, possible.
When have you been able to look back and be reflective on all these things? Have you got to a point in your career where you can look back to and speak to these things and understand? Just you said it, the butterfly moments. Do you understand how this has all happened?
Yeah. I think so. It's like, and then I think generally think a little bit about would it have happened regardless?
Yeah.
Hard to say. Could it have happened in a different way?
Yeah.
Maybe with a little bit of hindsight, eventually we found out new strategies.
Yep.
Right. So there is some skill there, and the right attitude and to be able to go and identify these certain things that happen in the market over a given time period.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's not to be taken for granted. No.
So you guys decide to start your own fund.
Yeah.
So this is kind of like your first, this is, I think, your first like jump into owning your own business,
Yeah.
doing your own thing.
Yeah.
And then I'd love for you to get into that and then also just kind of get into, well, I'll take you there, but just how it's all built. Because I feel like how you've built it and why you built it and like the foundation of it is different. So yeah.
Sure.
That idea to start your own thing, is that was that a natural, I got this now, I can put all this together? Or was it time and a place you're like, I need something?
I mean, first of all, like it kind of made economic sense to try.
Yeah.
So that, I guess that was the first step, and we thought we could do it. I guess it is worth mentioning that it can be quite an extraordinary experience to do with a business partner, as opposed to just doing alone.
Yep.
Or, if you're lucky enough to find somebody that you can meld with in that way, where together you're stronger than either one individually.
Yep.
Sorry for the cliche, but
No.
then I mean it's immensely satisfying. In this, I mean, we were trying to do two things at once, right? Which was survive in a massively competitive industry where you're trading against like all the big banks and Goldman and all the big commodity houses, like any big name that you can kind of think of.
Yeah.
And then start your own business, which is its own animal as well. So, I guess in reflection, it's not like it's no given that it can work out.
Yeah.
But considering kind of the ups and downs that we went through, it's immensely satisfying.
Yeah.
And I think there was definitely signs beforehand that we knew we could work together in that way, because we'd been through like so many trading days where every single day you're going back and forth and like talking through like all the minutia of a particular trade. And we spent so much time together in Houston. We had dinner 2 or 3 nights a week. Just talking through either the previous trade day or thinking about like what was the next strategy or at that time it was all consuming.
Like uncomfortably all consuming, like to the detriment of other pieces of your life.
I mean, certainly. Yeah.
Because it sounds like,
Yep.
dude, I know nothing about the industry, but when you're kind of all in and there's, at least you had somebody with you, but that
Yep.
shift work and is
Yeah. And I definitely for both of us.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. And I don't know if that's just a necessary thing in business or not. Like you can hear a lot of those stereotypes around like just the crazy hours, the crazy amount of devotion.
Yep.
I guess I have to just reinforce it that it's true. Yeah.
Do you think that's when you're in it, do you feel like it's that crazy? Do you understand that it's like all encompassing, that everything's in it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Yeah.
At times.
Yeah.
At times it's great, right? Like, but at times it was, you've got a trade on and you're watching it at night and it's going against you and you're just like, it's out of your control. You feel kind of suffocated in your chest. It's like, are we going to come back from this? And like there were some close calls within the first 6 to 8 months.
That something goes a different way and you guys are gone.
Yeah.
Do people understand that in your world? I guess it's not just your world, but every world, right? Like if you take a crack at a business,
Yeah.
and there's kind of these tipping points that you can, one wrong move or something out of your control, it can end it all.
Might be more acute in that industry. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Like all business is hard,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
the barriers to enter like the restaurant industry is relatively low, but fuck, is it hard to run something sustainable for years, right?
Yeah, 'cause
Like
there's
everything's hard.
Yeah.
It's all hard.
Yeah.
I guess where ours is a little bit different is, you can have these outlier moments where well, everything can go right in 5 days,
Yeah.
or it can all go wrong. Yeah. So I like, and to be an accomplished trader over time, this is part of what you have to manage. So not only managing like the psychology of being wrong all the time, as I was mentioning.
Yeah.
So like a really, really great trader would be like, right 75% of the time, like elite, you're like 80. But if you don't size your wagers or your bets properly, you can still end up flat. Or if you don't, so I'll give you an example, right? So let's say, in theory, you have to be right 2 out of 3 times, right, to make money. But if just depending on how the coins flip, if you get discouraged after day 3 and you don't trade on day 4, and day 4 was actually the day to make all of those 3 days back all of your losses, then you're like, you'll never make money. So it's like it's sizing the bets, it's not getting discouraged, it's knowing when. It's this very strange fine line of being very, very convicted about something, but then very open-minded when there's new information that you have to change your mind instantly. And that's so much of the job, and you get caught all the time. But yeah, it's not an easy thing, and we talk about it all the time. It's like it's not easy to identify whether somebody is suited for it or not.
Yeah,
it's like it's a very street smarts type role that you still need all this analytical skill, and
it's backed with all that.
Yeah.
How do you the conversation around like mental fitness has come up on this show a few times, which I kind of like. How do you give that much thought? Between the workload, family, and like, where does that fit into your life? Is it new? Has it always been there, or how do you manage it?
I would say it's consciously new, more recently. In that I'm more intentional about it, but it's probably one of my differentiators. Like if I think back, several years around what I kind of just do naturally, like I've always been into a bunch of different things. And so, I guess I'm better suited than most to be able to compartmentalize. And okay, I'm going to focus on this one particular thing, get it done, and then the next thing, and in a way that is not necessarily multitasking, but can do a bunch of different things. But when the most important thing is there, then focusing on the most important thing.
So when you say now you're a little more conscious with it, why is that?
Want to be a better husband, want to be a better father. Back to the sacrifices that were made earlier on. Realizing of late that that's not sustainable and not optimal, right? It's like it's not. You're not setting up family life great in that way. You're not necessarily setting up a good example for your kids. It's bad from a relationship perspective. So, but then tying this back, the mental fitness part, to, I guess, kind of the innovations that are happening from a human performance perspective that maybe they were there, but they hadn't made it into mainstream. And I'm very much interested in all of that, and have been spending a lot more of my time and energy in that direction of life. And you could characterize it as maybe like midlife crisis, or I don't know, but I'm feeling great. I haven't stopped moving since I stopped playing volleyball. I've continually had this this passion for movement. And
you think that's a differentiator too? Like that movement piece, whatever athleticism, whatever you're doing, just having that as a backbone or some sort of structure in your life, I feel like that just allows you to handle situations differently.
Could be. Could be. I mean, for me, it's gradually turned into a meditative space. At times, maybe escape. Other times, not.
Yep.
But when I'm not active, I'm miserable.
Yep.
Completely. So there's very much a tie back to my mental health from my physical health.
Yeah. It's for me, it's been like I finally figured it out. Finally, it's taken me a long time to understand how important that physical, just being active and doing something is.
Yeah.
Because there was honestly years, dude. I was working in these fucking cubicles, and the winters were killing me. Killing me to a point where I had this like daylight light at my desk, and I'd get to work and I'd turn this thing on and have this like light shining me for like 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is wrong with me? Something wrong with me internally and. And I was like fat, out of shape, and not active.
Yeah.
And then once I kind of like
Figured that out, it was like
clicked, then everything else I don't want to say it takes care of itself.
Yeah.
But you can now be put in different situations, whether they're pressure or just negative environments. You can like come out of it.
Yep.
It doesn't like consume you.
Yep.
I'm really curious about how you kind of operate your business, just the foundations around your environment, how if you've built something differently based on a bunch of experiences, and how you articulate that.
So I think we were always intentional about trying to build the team pretty slowly. Partially it was being financially conservative. And then partially it was, we wanted to work with people that we wanted to work with. So you can certainly operate a business like this in a completely different way where, you bring in several candidates knowing that, 3 of 5 or 4 of 5 or 5 of 5 are not going to work out. And that's just part of business, and you just punt them and then continue to move on. But it was that model never appealed to us to this day. And so, when I think about the camaraderie piece that we were kind of talking about, either consciously or subconsciously, that was always in the back of our mind when we were building things, right?
Just because you knew how it makes sense. If you're going to go through all this time and energy to build this thing out, you probably want to walk through the front door and be able to enjoy your time.
Yeah, you want Sunday nights to be good.
Yeah.
Right? Like you want Monday morning alarm, let's go. Like this is where I want to be. And I think the other part that's maybe a little bit different is we always thought the right amount of like information sharing and teamwork and kind of positive sum idea was going to be not only beneficial for the business, but again was going to be like more enjoyable to spend your days in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This has been a cool one. It's been you sat down, you're like, I don't know if I can say anything interesting, but hopefully I do. What's really cool is just to when you're talking about being like all in your business, almost to a detriment. You might not have said those words, but just like all consuming. You're the second business owner that I've had in the show that has said almost the exact same thing. And it's like this. What's fascinating to have these conversations is listening to successful people, whatever that means, that have built something. It seems like there's like this way to do it that's like crazy amount of work, intense, not healthy, and then they get to this spot where they kind of realize, okay, this isn't sustainable. Do you think you get to that spot just based on where you are with yourself and your family, financially, a mix of both? Like, what do you think that unlock is to kind of move a different way? And this is like a selfish question because I get to sit across from some really cool people.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to do is like arm myself with information to understand when I get in these spots, like, what can I look for? You said midlife. You kind of laughed it off like midlife, but like,
Yeah.
what allows you to get to a spot where you can make changes?
I think it has to be some combination of everything.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could allocate one particular thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I can be any more insightful than
No,
that.
but it's like,
I think it's just that. Like if maybe you have a moment where you can actually sit back and evaluate a little bit, as opposed to just like go on to the next thing.
yeah.
Then it's probably easier to kind of come to that realization. But like I think it's pretty natural to come to that introspective moment around like, well, what is this for? Like what ultimately, and then if you can have like a serious conversation with yourself and your family, then you can retune things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not to say that you like give everything up. You just think about things in a different way. Can I do this a little bit smarter? Was that really necessary? One thing we didn't talk about that's very much tied to Graham as well is, he planted the seed with me to quit alcohol as well, which, I gave up alcohol for a year and a half, and basically found an extra 2 hours of productivity.
Wow.
A day, I think, conservatively.
Yep.
And, drinking is just like very much like going back to sport culture, team sport culture, and then even trading culture, right? Like big winning day,
Heavy.
have a few drinks.
Yep.
Shitty day, have a few drinks.
Yep.
But yeah, like being able to step away from it and then, realize how just like this unlocking piece.
Yep.
So for me, that's like one of these things where, you're working smarter and better about things where you're unlocking time and productivity.
Yep. That if you didn't make that decision, does it look different for you? When you stop drinking, like, does it actually? Do you think could you have gone down a different path?
Well, certainly, yeah.
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 It was a pivotal moment where, like,
Yeah, I mean, this, excuse me, this gets into like a whole other tangent, but maybe for another conversation. But.
Dude, we got lots of time. The show is built on where the guests want, what tangents they want to go.
Okay.
On. So it has nothing to do with.
Okay, so this is a tangent, a business tangent, which we didn't talk about at all, which, several years into GBE, I went back and did my MBA. And then after that, Jerry and I started investing in other projects as well. And at that time, I met Brianne Everett, who's, I guess I should say Dr. Brianne Everett. So she's the founder of Orchestration Medical Technologies, another amazing company here in town. And at the onset of the pandemic, she set up a charity, first to raise funds to provide PPE to frontline workers. So this is like at a time where everything was super uncertain with the pandemic.
Yep.
How are we going to get PPE? We can't get anything from China, et cetera. And then managed to turn that those connections to AHS into a new PPE business as a part of Orpex. And then was also raising funds to continue on with the main medical technology business. So, which is the sensory insole system to prevent diabetic foot ulcers. So an amazing piece of technology that Brianne and her team have conjured up throughout the years as really like some of the first generation kind of wearable technology that we have. And so she was going through an investment round, and then it also, developed this PPE business. And at that time, like all markets were like at a standstill, didn't know what to do. So I came in with an investment at that point, and then joined the board of Orpex at that time as well. And she was also spitting out the technology to develop for non-medical applications as well. So, more specifically sport. And so that piqued my interest right away. So I managed to slide my way onto that board as well. And then started spending more and more time with Brianne that summer. Fell in love with the Kinetics project. And so Joe Magic and I were working together in Kinetics, former guest.
Yeah.
So I ended up joining full time that fall. Just really saw it as like this amazing opportunity to, use my experience as an entrepreneur and be able to do something in sport and technology. And it was at that time that I quit alcohol, where it was like, I only have like this one chance at this. Like, I don't want any excuses whatsoever. And it was, it would have been early 2020, like right before the pandemic. Graham and I were actually walking in Vancouver. We were both there for the Globe Conference, and we were talking about it. And like, again, it's an idea that hadn't even occurred to me, but then it felt like I needed that jolt or that little extra bit of motivation from somebody or something.
Yep.
And then so like the idea really stuck with me. I didn't initiate it right away. There was a few moments where I tried it for like 6 weeks and then on and off kind of thing.
Yep.
But yeah, that was the initiator. Yeah. To be able to look back at that point with like no regrets. Like, yeah.
So it's interesting. I was like, it's not one conversation that kind of, or maybe it was it one conversation just like, okay, I actually have to think about this because I've never thought about it.
Yeah, it's like I never even thought about it as an option.
Yeah.
Right. And not that I'm going to do a bunch of product plugs, but like at that time, I started using an Oura ring.
Yeah.
And you could start if you looked at the data with like.
Yeah.
You don't even have to be
No, man. Just how you get out of bed, you're like, oh, fuck.
Yeah. But it was just like, it was so obvious, how bad it was for you.
Mm-hmm.
And like at first I'm like trying to game the system. Like, okay, how many drinks can I have before like things really tip? It's like, but then, so then, then just decided to do it. And, that period of my life really like invigorated my devotion to, or I guess my next wave of devotion towards performance and, just trying to feel and perform as well as I can for as long as I can. That's kind of just the challenge. Like not in an insane way, I don't think, but like pretty committed way. And I don't know, I feel like I'm moving as well as I did in my mid to late 20s. So like, why wouldn't you try to keep doing that?
It's funny you bring up Magic on this show. The way she said it was, she's like an everyday athlete.
Yep.
And that kind of stuck with me.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
No, I think it's a brilliant way of framing it.
Yep. Yeah. Thanks for doing this.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, really cool. It's cool. Like I said, I was digging at you to like answer some questions. It's cool to sit across from people that have built things that I get to learn from. So part of the show is like, it may seem like it's all about the guest, but I'm sitting here listening all the time and actually
you're selfishly sitting there.
Yeah, and I'm just like learning things on the fly. So I do appreciate your time. I end the show with one question. When I say Calgary, where does your head go?
I think it's just home. Yeah, I don't think it's there's no other way to describe it. Yeah. It's home, and I try to have some imagination for where it can be and where it can go, and I think hopefully more people can as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, this is about as exciting a place I think as you can be over the next coming decades. If you think about like what's happening macro environment wise, this is a pretty great place.
I'm gonna take you're smarter than me, so I'm gonna take that as a good sign. So thanks again.
Thank you.